Hello, this is Mark here at Gary's Guitars in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I'm here to talk about the Ampeg Portaflex B-15. This happens to be my personal Ampeg. We get them in the store occasionally, but it's my favorite bass amp, and it's a favorite bass amp of a lot of people, and I want to talk about it. I want to talk to it. I want to talk about it and a lot of the reasons why it's so cool, advantages and disadvantages. So let's go. First of all, this is a talk about the Ampeg amp. Sometimes when I do these talks about amps, people comment, hey, why didn't we hear you play it? Well, there's plenty of people playing these things online. If you haven't heard this amp, then where have you been? Welcome to the planet Earth. This is the single most popular bass amp for the last 70 years. Anyway, I digress. Let's get into the basics. Ampeg. Ampeg was originally a pickup system you put inside the end pin, the end peg of your amp, of your bass, and you could plug it into an amplifier. So they started amplifying bass before they did anything else. The Ampeg. So the B-15 came around about 1960. There's a lot of this information exists in a more comprehensive way in this book, Ampeg, the Story Behind the Sound. So I'm going to say a lot of abouts just to keep things moving. Portaflex is what I call it, a B-15. It's technically the B-15n, and it's part of the Portaflex series, and we'll flip the top, or the flip top amp. And we'll be flipping that top soon. So, and when we take a look at it. It was immediately a favorite of bass players, especially in New York in the jazz scene, and that just led to its popularity, most notably also in studios. It became the studio bass amp in, the Stax studio and the Motown studio. Even though Motown did use a direct signal to go to the tape, the amp was in the room, and it was the sound that they were monitoring and the sound that bled into everything else. It's a very important sound, and bass players to this day insist upon it. What makes it so special? Well, a certain roundness to the note, a tonal quality that is uniquely Ampeg that they've been chasing to this day. The new Ampeg Class D amplifiers have, some buttons and switches to essentially introduce more distortion to the signal to make it sound more like a B-15. Because this thing distorts at most any volume. And when I say distortion, I don't mean Eddie Van Halen distortion. I mean harmonic distortion, just beautiful halos on those notes. So it's not a particularly clean amp, but the sound that it gives us, it just gives us a beautiful sound, and that's why we love it. The 15 stands for the 15-inch speaker. They came out with a B-18 and a SB-12. Those are not as good, and I'm sorry to say it. This is the golden era. This is a 64. And later they had some revisions of it. They're all fine of the B-15 series. The B-12, a little less ideal for bass. A little more, it's the 12-inch speaker. It's more like a guitar amp. This you can play anything through. I've played anything through it. Guitars, pedal steel, organ, all sorts of stuff. It is indispensable Swiss Army knife in my studio. As a matter of fact, all sorts of bands wind up recording with it. I had I guess it's death metal, a very Nordic sounding metal band that couldn't get their bass sounding right. And they came into my studio and they're like, the bass sounds, bass is not working. I'm like, let's put it through the B-15. And we did. They recut all their tracks for the B-15 and it worked. It's just a natural, great bass sound. So it's maybe 25 watts. It claims to be 40 watts or 35 watts, two 6L6s, but it's not as loud as half as loud as a Bassman. And once you get past 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock on the knob, oops, I'll gesture this way, it distorts, and then you get up too high and it really distorts. Gary here at Gary's Guitars used to call it the B-15 rule. If you can't hear the bass, then the guitars have to turn down. So yeah, it was his way of keeping the band he was in line. So let's do a little walk around, talk about some more of the attributes and the pros and cons. I'll introduce that as well. So here we go. Here's a little walk around. This is the flip top flipped up. So this fits inside the amp. The top, the speaker. This is, designed at its best. The speaker magnet kind of sits right here when it's flipped in. You got an input and output transformers right on the top. This has a replacement power transformer. It's pretty common for that to happen. This little cage keeps all the tubes safe from running away. And this piece of plexiglass that says Ampeg on it lights up when you turn the amp on. It's beautiful. And I think for an extra $1, they would also engrave it with whatever you wanted to written here. Some people get their band name or their own name engraved in the amp when they bought it. 2 channels, completely discrete from each other. Well, not completely, because but volume and tone for both sides, and then they, of course, combine the power stage. A low and a high for the channel 1 and a regular channel 2. In some B-15s, one channel sounds better than the other. It's just because they're all older these days, I guess. I like my channel 2 better than my channel 1. Although, in order to make me like channel 1 better, I did a little mod. I'll show it to you in a second. The best mod to do to any amp, vintage amp, is a 12-foot grounded power cord. All my amps have them because I've just spent too many times running around stages trying to find a place to plug my damn amp in, asking for power strips or asking a staff member at the club for power. So that was a welcome change in my life. All right, let's have a look here. Got the cage off, so hopefully none of the tubes run away. 5U4 rectifier, so tube rectifier, pair of 6L6s. Octal preamp tubes, except for, here's the mod I was talking about. I got this little, come on, don't embarrass me in front of my friends. Okay. This little tube socket adapter. So you can plug a 12AX7 into an octal and just use half the 12AX7. Now, there are those who tell you that a 6SL7 is just a one side of a 12AX7. The 12AX7 is just a two side 6SL7. But it's not true. Tonally, there's a difference. So, the octal preamp tube, just like in the oldest Bassman, it's part of the tone. It has this really weird connector. It's an 8-pin Amphenol connector. So that when you disconnect the speaker, it puts the amp into standby mode. And someone's engineering idea. It sounds a little dangerous to me, but I've left it vintage. Some people undo that because it sends that DC voltage to that socket and it comes back and forth. 2 discrete channels. Well, they're not completely discrete because, of course, they meet up later, but a volume and bass and treble control for each channel. So there's 2 channels. A ground switch that I disabled when I put the grounded cable on. Standby and power switch, and over here it has two inputs for channel 1 and 1 for channel 2. As is common, one is kind of like a bright and normal situation. There's probably just a cap across it. I have to check to make sure, but just bears mentioning, there's this company called Flip Tops that repairs, restores, and sells parts for these amps. Without them, most of the Ampeg B-15s out there would not be going. So let's say thank you to them. Check them out, fliptops.net. They recently had a fire, I think, so support them if you can. All right. And now for the cons, because I promised pros and cons. It's the greatest bass amp ever made. What could be wrong? It's heavy for what it offers. You know, it's a team lift kind of thing. It has a single. Actually, if you saw, my handle is not on the top. Those would often fall off because Single-handed on the top. Anyways, it can be heavy. It, like I said, does distort, but in a good way. Originally, they're not grounded, and non-polar power cables make it a little fun, so to speak, in certain situations. Those are the only cons I can think of. It really is a lot of pros and not a lot of cons. It's just the tone, it's the sound. A lot of everyone who comes to my studio uses this thing. It's on most of the records I've made in the last 25 years or so. I've brought this. I used to bring it to clubs to play in them. So I remember writing it down. It's right over here, so I'm gesturing toward it. I remember writing it down like Avenue A on the way down in the Lower East Side, going to some place to play. Like literally, like getting a running start and jumping on top of it. Just, you know, me and this amp, we've been through it. So lately it's in the studio mostly, and when I go out playing bass, a lighter weight, more powerful amp, you know, often goes. But it's indispensable sound. It's the best bass amp ever made. So thanks for watching, and check out all the other videos here on YouTube, and check out Facebook and Instagram and all that, and we'll talk to you soon.